Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Search Engine Journal webinar. Today, we are joined by Kevin Rowe, founder and CEO of PureLink, who will be talking about how to identify site quality for link building. And, as somebody who's been around in this industry for, 16, 17 years, I've really seen the gambit on, link building, from hacking sites and embedding links to the old MySpace when Sammy did the MySpace trick, to basically embed everything and cause worms, to quality, high quality, organic link building and everything in between. And I'm really impressed with the presentation we have for you today. It's really modern, it's very relevant today, and I think it really answers the questions that people have when they're looking to do link building today. My name is Brent Satoris. I'll be moderating. Kevin, do you want to take a moment and just tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into some housekeeping?
Sure thing. My name is Kevin Rowe. I'm the founder and CEO of PureLink. It's an enterprise link building solution. I've built two seven-figure SEO companies in the last 5 years. My focus, my expertise is really around SEO automation technology, link building, and I like to tout that I am as expert as you can be in the Google Link Scheme guidelines and the quality rater guidelines as it reflects in link building. I've worked on such clients as like Hyatt Hotels, Bulletproof Coffee, Custom Ink, Coca-Cola, and a number of large enterprise level clients, both in e-commerce, online product sales, lead generation, and content marketing.
Beautiful. Jumping into some quick housekeeping points. If during the webinar at any point you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask through the webinar question box at the bottom of your screen. Also, we will have a poll, relatively soon in the presentation. We'll have our poll, and that's an opportunity for you to kind of give some feedback. So if you don't mind just taking a quick moment and actually, participating and taking the poll, we'd really appreciate it. After which we will continue on with the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A. And we will answer all of your questions. So again, throughout the entire presentation, if you have any questions, just throw them in the question box. We'll gather all those questions up and we'll touch all of those at the Q&A at the end. We'll do our best throughout the presentation to link any resources. If Kevin mentions a tool or he mentions a site, we'll try to throw that link into the conversation, into the chat. If we miss something, ask us and we'll make sure that we get it for you. At the end of the webinar, we do have a quick 5-minute survey. This is really helpful to us if you don't mind taking the time. I know it's asking for extra time and nobody really loves filling out surveys, but it's really short, it's really quick, and we review that in depth every single time. Kevin will review that as well and get a chance to learn from you how we can improve our webinars going forward. Without any further ado, Kevin, let's dive into some link building.
Thanks, Brent. So I'm going to be talking about a very specific aspect of link building. So link building goes the gamut, right? From strategy out to analyzing and reporting, outreach, prospecting. But what I want to really talk about, and I think is not talked about enough, is how do you evaluate prospective sites? And should you care about it, right? Well, yes. So I think most people on this webinar, I'm sure about the Google Penguin update, and that the Google Penguin update specifically targets link schemes in a way. And so, we'll talk about a specific type of links as well, which is in-article niche relevant links. That's really important. So a lot of this, what I've seen work, and what we've noticed is what we like to look at when it comes to site or blogs. So that's what we're going to be heavily talking about. I'm not going into directory links. We're going to talk about in-article contextual links. And then I'm going to really dive into pretty deeply, I think, into how to identify a site that is good for link building and is not good for link building. Go beyond the basics, the visuals, really dive deep into what really matters. And we're going to talk about 6 key elements. So these are this is how I categorize, this is how I categorize sites for, or at least, the review process for sites. So first off, content, written and visual content for blogs and main site content as well. The admin, so do they have advertising and what are the policies? And the link profile, I think this is a really important one. What does the link profile of the sites we're going after actually look like? The authorship, so who is responsible for not just the content written, but the main site's content as well. The reputation of either that author or that site, and then technical components. So how do people engage with the site, and where is the site located? So I've used this process to, this is just an example of how we've used this process to increase organic traffic. So we had over, through this, we strictly only did link building in this case study. We use the process I'm going to outline to evaluate each site that we got throughout the program. And at the time, this site was actually stagnant, like there was no new content being produced. And so we just, through this process I'm going to teach you in this webinar, we were able to generate over 1,000% increase. Now, this is not seasonality either. So we were able to get to over 304,000 sessions by December of 2019. As a result of using this process of evaluating sites. And again, that's year over year. This is month over month. Year over year, the growth was actually much more impressive with this program. And we did that for this one specifically. At the time, we generated over 680 links roughly. So here's a poll if you want to take a minute to submit your answers.
Awesome. Let me just launch that up real quick for you guys. So here we go. What are your business goals? Really simple one. Online product sales, lead generation, improving your branding, or all of the above? Again, what are your business goals right now? Are you looking to, have online product sales increase? You're looking to, get more leads? You're looking to brand your company more? Or you really want to do all of it? And we'll give it just a minute. I like to let it get up to about 75% of the people are higher voting, so we're almost there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it. We're about there, and I'll share with everybody. Look at that. Pretty good in the lead generation space. A lot of people in all of the above. Interesting results, Kevin. I'll hand it back to you now.
Thank you. So now when you're going about evaluating your sites for prospecting, should you listen to Google on the links? It's a big question, and it's hot right now because Google's very active and I think very active in making comments about it. And they even more recently, between the time I created this presentation and now, John Mueller from Google actually stated, yes, links do have an impact. He literally stated that. And I didn't have time to integrate the actual quote into the presentation, but I thought that was very interesting. However, I do not believe you should be looking at Google sources for ways to identify link scheme guidelines. They're just not good enough. So you have three real different options when it comes to Google. One, the link scheme guidelines. Two, in the middle you'll see is the Google Quality Rater Guidelines, Content Quality Rater Guidelines. And then over here on the right, you actually have John Mueller, which is a Google representative, and his tweets or his comments, which is, I get a lot of information. I follow him pretty closely for that. But, so on the link scheme guidelines, my opinion is you shouldn't be following these too closely. If you do, you're most likely going to suffer from a unperforming link program, meaning you're not going to be able to get enough links. These link scheme guidelines are very ambiguous, and they're based on intent, which I think is really important to note. Meaning, I intended that link to drive ranking, and that's what the general idea of the guidelines are. Google can't interpret intent at least when it comes to a link for the most part. They don't know a natural, good, high quality link. Google's not going to be able to say if you went out and got that link for the purposes of improving the reader's experience, or if your secondary goal was to drive organic ranking. Should you follow the leader? Should you follow what John Mueller says or his recommendations? You'll see right here one of John Mueller's quotes on the right, one of his tweets rather, is commenting about guest posting and how old guest posting is, and that they've been actually able to identify when a guest post is made by somebody and has a link back to their website. That's what they're claiming. They're saying that the algorithm is so good it picks up a huge percentage of these. I can tell you that with the last 10 years of link building, even now, even more recent data, that guest posting does still work. If done right, if it's done for the reader, but at the same time enhanced with links to other pieces of content. And then you'll see on the left, this is another example of John Mueller making a comment about just saying don't do guest posting, avoid it. And he's even saying now that all links in guest posts, this is very recent, this is as of July 11th, 2020, all links should be no followed inside of your guest posts. I am, I'm against it, and not just me. Dr. Peter Myers from Moz he blatantly said on Moz, which is they have a lot of guest posts and guest writers on there that are very smart. He said that he would not no follow all of the links on the Moz's blog because they go through such a stringent vetting process, and the links are so quality and the content such high quality, they don't believe they should have to. And I can tell you, they did not, they have not been suffering. I'm going to jump a slide ahead. This is the Moz. So I jumped into SEMrush and got estimated Moz organic traffic. Moz still, to this day, is increasing organic traffic month over month. They just keep going quality. So to tell me that Google, Google is that Google's spokesperson, one of them, John Mueller, says that you have to no follow links, to me, just, is not justified. So I don't really follow too closely what he says and what you shouldn't do. I'm not the only one. Rand Fishkin, also same thing. I strongly disagree with Google Rep as take on guest posting and no follow links. There's a lot of people out there that are standing up against Google. So I do believe that we should not be following what John Mueller says. As far as link building goes. And then you can also use the Google Search Quality Rater guidelines. So now with the Search Quality Rater guidelines, it's a very long document. It's not necessarily meant to guide your link building, but it gives you a good idea of what Google thinks is relevant in terms of content quality at the very least. But quoted Ben Gomez on CNBC on a CNBC interview said, you can view the quality rater guidelines as where we want the search algorithm to go. They don't tell you how the algorithm is ranking the results. So as far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't be looking into that for all the answers, and we need to come up with our own interpretations. And that's why I'm going to be talking about in this presentation. So now what do you need to look at, right? There's metrics and then there's quality. And I want to reiterate that right now in the current landscape of the data and the metrics that we do have available, metrics is different than I think a quality review. And you'll see that if you really dive into Google Quality Rater guidelines, you'll see that as well. So metrics, what metrics are important? So this study from ARIA Digital in the UK, it was a pretty robust study. I think they had over 500 respondents. They surveyed what metrics do you use most to identify site quality. I believe that was a terrible paraphrase, but I think you get the idea. Number one was domain authority from Moz, followed by domain rating from Ahrefs, then page authority from Moz, TrustFlow. Now I'm just going to jump down here to link score from Verb. This is relatively unknown, and I actually was very impressed with their metric. So looking at all these metrics, I can tell you, and I'm sure you would know, we can't judge a site to go after by whether or not it has a high or low domain authority. There's even people out there selling links based on domain authority, and we've tried it too, experimented with it at one of my companies. And I just don't, we just abandon it because it really doesn't reflect what is quality and whether or not that site's going to actually have an impact on your ranking. So a very low domain authority site that's highly contextual, maybe done by a scientist, just doesn't have the reputation, but it's highly trusted and a great, highly reputable, blog. So none of these, including spam score, and I do want to reiterate this, do not use spam score as a sole metric to identify whether or not you want to get a link, or even if you're disavowing sites. Don't use that alone. You need a much deeper analysis. And so this is what Google Quality Scale looks like. So aside from the metrics, this quality scale is based on actual review of the content, the reputation of the person that you're reviewing, or the site or the brand. So this is on a scale from lowest all the ways to highest. It's very, very simple, but you have the lowest plus, low, low plus, and then medium. So you can kind of see that this, I actually don't mind this scale. It does help for a very simple understanding. So I do recommend, if you're building your own score, and I do recommend you build your own system for doing it, you don't use all the metrics out there. You need to be able to review these manually. I think you could use this. So this is really meant for almost, this is meant to cover, content depth, credibility of the sources, and then is there a purpose to the content? So I do want to talk about that, but does the content actually have purpose? Is there a meaning to it besides, getting a link? And so once again, we will go over, I'm going to dive into these areas, which is more of a quality review rather than metrics. So that ties into the Google Quality Rater guidelines. I like the manual review of the sites. I believe in this so much and that there's no metrics out there that can really cover all these areas. We invented our own score called Pure Grade. It's on a scale of 0 to 100. And it's really about whether or not the site itself is high quality or low quality. So, for example, anything under a pure grade of 40, the purpose of the content is most likely going to be made for SEO. So how do you go about analyzing these sites? What are the different elements? I really want to dive into it pretty deeply, but before we do that, I want to talk about what makes up a grade assessment. How do you actually evaluate it? How do you compare all of these metrics? And it's really important to note that when you're evaluating all these sites, don't look at just one thing. If you go to a site and it looks ugly and then you just say, I'm going to leave, this doesn't make sense for us, that isn't deep enough. Ugly sites have great content. And great looking sites have ugly content. So you have to weight all of your elements that you review. And then you have to build a footprint, right? So don't just use one, you have to use all the different elements of a website you're going to be reviewing. What does the content look like? Again, the link profile, the authorship, the reputation. And once again, we will go over each of these elements in depth. So I do want to talk about like how I went about developing a pure grade score. The whole purpose again here is on this one, it's a scale from 1 to 100. If you're going to be evaluating a link profile, you want to come up with some sort of weighted scoring system similar to something similar to this. Or if you want to actually build a disavow list, you can use ideas like this, not just prospecting new sites for link building, but also when you're building your disavow list, I'm not necessarily recommending that you build a disavow list or that you have to if you see spammy links, but if you happen to think you're penalized or you've had a manual action or a manual penalty or some sort of manual reprimand, you may be looking into it. I'm not recommending it. Very, very few people should be doing disavows, but companies rather, or websites. But you can use scores like this to actually do it. So first element I do want to talk about, and I think is the most obvious one, the content. So here, when you're reading through the content, you need to know and identify if they actually have commercial links inside the content. For example, search engine journals, I write for Search Engine Journal periodically, and you can see if you review any of the content, it's very rare, that, or if at all, it's kind of against guidelines, to have links pointing to like money pages or e-commerce pages for sales. It's very rare that it makes sense in some cases. It's just look to see if links are placed on there for SEO. Is the anchor text over optimized? And is it going to like a money page? The navigation of the site, is this navigation way too general? Does it have no keywords, which I call no in but it's like gambling, porn, payday loans, things like that. And that doesn't necessarily mean, always, all right? In bulk, or if it looks like it was, specifically made for, selling payday loans, but it's a blog, there's a good chance that might weigh heavily on Google as well. How frequently do they post is also a really important one. So you can see over here in this, screenshot example, 3 steps to fixing bad credit. But honestly, this site is really general. So I'm seeing this and I'm seeing main navigation here, and this says to me, this may very well be way too general. The navigation looks off because you have financial news, tech news, and then health and lifestyle. That to me indicates I might want to dive a little bit deeper. Next, the administrative components of the page. So this is like the About Us or advertising page or the info page, a contact page. So a number of times our team has reviewed maybe 100,000, 50 to 100,000 sites as a community, pages, excuse me. And across that, what we've noticed is that there are a number of About Us pages or advertising pages that say buy, do, follow links. For example, I'm just going to go ahead and bring up a site. And Brent, let me know if this isn't showing, but I'm showing a browser right now. And you'll see on the advertising, great. So you'll see on the advertising page, social media links in my first post, $55. So you really want to scan through this About Us page and see if you see anything that says something about buy, do, follow links. That's always right here. Perfect, found it. $20 each, additional do, follow link. Google can algorithmically figure that out. You tell me they can't, and I don't know that they can differentiate between a page that doesn't have a do follow link in it and that does now, or excuse me, it can differentiate it, but like a paid link and not, or paid guest post or not. So to me, that's one of the big almost. It's not quite. I'm going to cancel. I'm not going to use the site, but that's probably one of the major factors I would, that would say to me, let's avoid the site. But I would weight that highly. Next, link profile. So I use Ahrefs in order to analyze the link profile of a site. So does it have excessive links pointing to one page, and the page doesn't make sense for the links? Does it have a low authority using DA or DR? I do like to look at that, but again, I will not use that as my only metric for selecting a site. It's just a good way to aggregate and understand the aggregate, as opposed to reviewing every link individually. And does it have actually non-relevant links? Too many of them. Anyway, there's always non-relevant links to a degree, but is the entire site irrelevant? Is the link profile for the entire site irrelevant? And so for me, I think that's actually really important to note. And what I'm going to bring up right here, I'm going to go through a live presentation in Ahrefs. I'm just going to do a few, look at a couple sites, for example. So looking at the backlink profile for this, which is one of our example sites. Let's see, we'll go to referring domains. And you'll see, out of the gate, it looks like, it has Wikipedia. I mean, maybe it's legit. Anybody can get a link on Wikipedia if it's done correctly. Then second you start going down the list, you realize the link quality, metric-wise, starts going down really quick. So this site has a number of metrics, but very quickly, they start going down to a low DR. So that to me indicates maybe we should be looking at their link profile a little bit deeper, maybe. But I do recommend making sure the link profile looks natural. It's spread throughout the site. Again, this site with a low DR has over 241,000 backlinks. It's just screaming something's happening, something's going wrong. Next is the authorship. Now, finding the person, and our SEO director actually, he likes to push the idea that if you can't find a person, it's not real. And in Google Quality Rater guidelines, they actually they do suggest that is a possibility, but they've also stated in the Google Quality Rater guidelines that if you don't find information on the person, doesn't necessarily mean they're not reputable. It's just sometimes some people don't have a lot of information out there about them. That's okay. But in general, I like to look at, try to find somebody or at least find out more information about the main content. So Google Quality Rater guidelines, one of the things I do like about them is they identify the main site content and then the internal content and who is making the main site content, what is the brand, or maybe the person or the person brand. And then who's making the content internally, right? So for example, Search Engine Journal has a general brand, right? And we know who they are, but the contributors individually, what's the reputation of them? And there's a differentiation there. So I like to look at names and bylines to see if these actually do have names and bylines. I like to look at the author page, and then whether or not the author is from another country specifically. I'll go through a quick little example here. You'll see that this actually says staff writer in the name. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I would kill it. Some smaller blogs tend to have, maybe a little less sophistication, but it's another indicator. I've heard some people actually say if it doesn't have the actual person on there, I'm not going to actually use that site. But then you'll see sites like this one. So right in here, if you start to dive in a little bit, you'll notice there's nothing. I have nothing about that author on here. So for me, I do see this sometimes, but you know, I would like to see more about the author. And for me, if we can't find the author, especially in Your Money, Your Life, Your Money, Your Life, I do want to say is a lot more strict. You have to be a lot more stringent on your review, right? So you need to find a person. You need to make sure they're reputable. And in Your Money, Your Life, like health, medical. And most recently, I did a podcast with within the last month with the global SEO manager at IHG, and we discussed the idea, Intercontinental Hotel Group, and we discussed the idea that now even hotels are possibly becoming Your Money, Your Life, because when in travel and with COVID, you have to have a lot of medical information, so you have to cite your information extremely deeply. So when it comes to Your Money, Your Life, you know, I think that it is something you have to be a lot more stringent about. You have to find the author, but in general, I don't worry about it, but I will take away points if they don't have it. Now, the reputation I consider different than the link profile. The reputation is, do they have a following? Does their content get shared, right? Do they have do they actually have a social presence? And is it that could be of the site, the brand, or the influencer or the person? Do they have any sort of following? You know, again, I'm not going to not use a site if they don't have followings, but I would use this as a positive, but I'm not going to take away from them not having a following. And then, is it engaged? Is there engagement with the content on social? So are they actually commenting on the posts, etc.? So you can see right in here. I've used a tool called BuzzSumo. There are a number of other tools, and right now we've gotten to the point where we're analyzing so many sites we can't necessarily use BuzzSumo. We have to generate it in aggregate, and I've built a whole software based around that. But I do, if you know, for you, a resource for you would be, I think, BuzzSumo, and that'll give you Facebook engagements, or Facebook shares or engagements, as they say it, Twitter. This does have Pinterest in it too, and then I'll also actually give you the number of links the post has gotten. Now, technical. I actually do like this example. Technical for me, I'm not talking about load time. I'm not talking about, you know, code to content ratio or anything like that. Technical for me means, is it actually indexed? Which is a little bit harder to identify sometimes than you might think. Most tools you know, use Google's API, and it actually doesn't really report good. So I go right into Google. I search for the site. Geographically, does it look like the content is focused on the audience in the country that you are targeting? It's very, you know, maybe you're targeting international audience, but more often national. And then also page engagements. So right now, more recently, Google reps have come out and actually blatantly said that engagement with the page is now going to be a factor in identifying whether or not a link a page is relevant and authoritative. I don't know exactly what it is, but you know, we've historically, and some people are debating this right now, whether or not this is the right thing to say, but I will say it. Pogo sticking. So when you go to a site, you enter, you know, you enter on land on a page, and then you leave, you go back to the search engine, you hit back, whatever it might be, and then you go into the next result. That could be considered low engagement. I have a feeling Google's looking at it from, you know, a heat mapping perspective to a degree, and they give examples. So right inside of the Google Quality Rater guidelines, they give this example of a site that is very, very low quality. This is one of the lowest quality one they had for recipes. And this is a classic apple pie. And so you see, I'm pretty sure, like, you know, if I go to a page, I'm looking for classic apple pie, and they have this, you know, kind of weak recipe, if you will. And then you look on the navigation. The only place you can click here is this ad or this navigation. And the navigation, so if I'm coming here looking for a classic apple pie, I'm not going to want to learn about making a hamburger or chicken. So, you know, or a milkshake or something like that. So there's likely, if I land here, there's no other relevant navigational elements that is going to push me somewhere further. So to me, this would be very low engagement. Doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, well, this site in general, I would never go after because it meets none of the quality guidelines that we set. But and it is a very extreme example. However, I think that you know, in your case, you're not going to see anything this clear, but just remember, look at to see if the, you know, if somebody lands on that page, are they going to be clicking around? Are they going to go, is there somewhere they can naturally navigate to? So Brent, I'll turn it over to you and we can move on to Q&A.
Awesome, great job there. A lot of really good information. This is one of those things that I think a lot of people gloss over when talking about, you know, link building is, and I think it's because maybe they're afraid to give away too much information, you know, and they don't, you know, they can't get as much lead gen or they can't get as much business. But this is the information that really helps, in my opinion, to understand that really, you know, tough area between good and horrible, you know, like amazing and horrible. There's a lot in between, and it gets scary, especially when you have companies like, you know, Google themselves coming out and saying very strongly that they'll penalize, or that they'll, you know, they don't call it penalties anymore, but they'll, you know, take all these actions or remove value or all of these things. It's very tough. And then you have, you know, people that spend a lot of money in this space and don't see results. So to really get into like defining the overarching process of valuing, it's a tough conversation to begin with. Most people don't want to make this decision on their own. They're like, just tell me what links are good. You know, like same conversation as how many words should be on an article and how many keywords should be on a page, right? So you see, you know, you see a lot of that. But this information, for anybody who's listening, this information really, you know, if you go back and review it later again and really pay attention to it, it's really, really good. So thank you, Kevin, for actually sharing, you know, a layer deeper into what to really look for in value, because I think that's the toughest question people are trying to answer today.
For sure.
So we do have a number of questions. I just want to take 2 seconds to kind of, you know, announce our next SEJ webinar, which is how QA testing for SEO can boost your traffic and revenue, with Mark Monroe, CEO of SEO Radar. That is in 2 weeks. Definitely watch for that, sign up. Join us for that. But diving into some of the questions, I have quite a few coming in. First one I wanted to ask was, look, you know, with Google saying one thing, you know, a lot of times SEOs are stuck in this position where they report to somebody who maybe oversees them a little more than they should, or second guesses them a little more than they should, or thinks that they know more about SEO than maybe they do. And you get a lot of these conversations where you might have somebody say, well, Google says don't build links, and you're trying to explain to them, yes, but we're not going to build shady links, we're going to build good links, you know. And they're having a discussion. What would you say are some of the key talking points that you can share with, you know, a boss? You mentioned some of those tweets and stuff, but are there any additional talking points that can help convince somebody that link building is something valuable?
Yeah, here's my biggest thing. Google is not looking out for your business. Google is looking out for Google. You look out for your business, right? So Google, so what do you need to help your business grow, right? You need leads, and you need leads and sales from organic, or brand, you know, or improve your brand presence. So I think the biggest talking point is Google is not out there to help our business. Google is out there to help Google.
Yep, that's a great answer. So
and then use data points, of course, to support
it.
Yeah.
I think, you know, great examples also were the ones you put in the presentation. You know, having, you know, big names that are established, that are challenging in a very productive and real way. Some of the messaging, I think, is very valuable to understand that, you know, the difference in that. And I think you can also look at some of the historical kind of, this absolutely is one way and then it's not afterwards. Google has done that historically, and it's something that you kind of pay attention to and use examples for. You mentioned earlier, and this is something that, you know, that we both understand about. If you build a link, if you do a guest post, you make the comment, don't link back to your money page, right? Why not?
So it's not that you can't, but commercial links you have to be very careful with. They need to be natural. It needs to make sense for the article. But the reality is it's not always going to make sense. So there's a couple of reasonings here. First off, will it look natural in the article? Second, is that the right thing to do for links? You know, do you want links to your commercial pages? We do a ton of link building for e-commerce sites that go to category level pages. It does work. But I think there's incentive for you to spread your links across more pages rather than go towards your money pages. So if and it's very different in e-commerce versus lead generation. It could differ. So there's a rationale there that you shouldn't, in general, you should not be only doing link building to your money pages, your category pages, or your product or service pages. You should be building your site authority. And a lot of the top ranking sites, if you do an analysis using the Ahrefs top pages report by links, you will see that, and if you're analyzing the top competitors, for me, I tend to see more articles with more links rather than product or service pages. So it's kind of it's natural, first off. Secondly, if you want to have a natural looking link profile from the perspective of a article inside of the article, a natural looking link inside the article, it's very rare that you will actually click on a link inside of an article, it will drive you to a commercial page and you'll feel like that enhanced my reading experience. So for us, when we're evaluating, I actually even built a whole guide about how to link to commercial links. We use it internally. I don't make it available to anybody, but we're very close knit on that one. But it's harder to make that look natural than if you're linking out to an article, because the article is going to enhance the experience and the knowledge of the user, of the reader.
Yeah, and I think just to touch on one of those points, it's about what's valuable for the article context and the reader. If you're doing a comparison where you're comparing features of two different companies, it makes a lot more sense to link to a feature page or link to a money page, right, than it would be in a content-based article. So that's a really great point. This individual, Monica, I hope you don't mind me mentioning you asked it publicly. Monica asked the question, she's in the interest lender vertical and she can't put links on her payday loan sites. She can't get links from payday loan sites because I'm guessing there's some regulations, or maybe it's just not something that their company's allowed to do. I'm not as familiar with that space, but she asked the question, what other sites would you think might be relevant for a high interest lender vertical that are not payday loan sites?
So that's a really good and a smart question. So with payday loans, I think, sure, you can do business and finance categories for sure. Now, keep in mind, when you're identifying contextual relevancy of a site, you are looking at not just the site, but do they have a section of the website that talks about it? There are a lot of sites out there that may have, like we even saw, may have a financial section. Well, maybe it makes sense to talk about that, or startups, or maybe even, I don't know that I would recommend this completely, but I'll state that it's a possibility, which is maybe looking for sites targeted towards college students. Again, I'm not necessarily recommending that, but it's possible. Categories like that, you need to get creative when you're selecting a category, or make sure you can find a site with a section that's relevant. So I think that there's a lot of startup related blogs out there. There's a lot of money management blogs as well, or blogs with sections that talk about money management. I think that would be a good one. Because it actually would make sense to list out payday loans very naturally in a money management site, listing out types of payday loans that could be out there. So I would look into things along those lines.
And just to throw one more thing out there, a lot of times what I'll like to do is look for people that are already talking about the industry, especially journalism and some of those spaces. And you can go out and provide some sort of value, right? So if you're providing something like you do some sort of surveys, you do some sort of statistical analysis, and then you put out a white paper, you can reach out to journalists. Those people will link back to you. If you join HARO, which is Help a Reporter Out, and you put yourself out there to talk about these topics in articles, a lot of times you'll get reference links back to your company. So those are some ways that you can, kind of identify sources, look at who's actually out there talking about your industry that's not those sites, and you'll be able to kind of figure out what kind of category sites could really work well.
For sure.
Multiple tools out there for solo practitioners can get quite pricey. I mean, we know this, right? I mean, you're trying to, you say there's like, oh, well, we want Ahrefs, we want SEMrush, we want Moz, we want, all these different tools out there, right? What alternatives are there that would allow somebody to get the most out of these tools without having the budget? So let's say you have a limited budget. Are there one or two tools that really get you most of the way there?
So it depends on what your objective is. So the tools, I have a major problem with the technology that's available in the SEO industry. I think we're so far behind where we need to be to grow this industry. It's ridiculous. I'm building my own. I'm actually physically right now building a model to figure out like what technology is actually missing from the marketplace. So this is something I'm really passionate about. And I will say this: it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. So so if you want, what do you want to do? Link building. What do you want to do? Technical analysis? Do you want to do just reporting and monitoring? Do you want to monitor ranking? I have built my own, like over the years, over the last 10 years, I've mixed and matched a lot of different tool sets like SEMrush, AWR Cloud, all of it. There's actually some old and cheaper items out there when you want to do tools out there when you want to do some rank tracking. So for example, AWR is if you have a lot of keywords you want to, there's a lot goes into this answer. If you
It's fine. It's an important answer, so it's worth the time.
Yeah, so if you want to track a lot of keywords, for example, thousands of keywords versus maybe you want to track like 20 keywords. 20 keywords you can do Moz, and that's okay, but it scales up. Same with SEMrush, it scales up. Those are good, I think, decent tools, but it doesn't allow you to track as many keywords. I like to track thousands upon thousands of keywords when I track it for any given site. And there's different ways you can go about tracking it. But if you want to track and monitor, I use AWR Cloud. It is by far for me, it's been the cheapest, best tool over the years. I've actually consistently used that since they first came out with it, and Advanced Web Ranking was the tool I was using previously. I thought Advanced Web Ranking, I'll tell you this, Advanced Web Ranking, I don't think it gets a lot of the credit maybe it should anymore. But between the link building tool that they offer, it's probably one of the better quality, or excuse me, not quality, but price to quality range, because it's very cheap. But you can do a lot with it. There's a advanced web ranking desktop version, then there's the advanced web ranking link outreach tool. I haven't used those ones in a very long time, but that's where I got started using those because the cost was so low for the amount of work we could do. There's also, now if you want to go out and scrape, if you want to go out and scrape sites and do things like that, AWR also has an auditing section in it. Now the problem with it is that it doesn't audit enough pages. So if you have an enterprise site, I'm assuming if you're asking this question, you don't necessarily have a site with 50,000 pages. But when we audit sites with 50,000 pages, one of my companies does a lot of technical SEO. But when you want to do those enterprise ones, you need specialized tools like like you might want to use Screaming Frog, which kind of conks out sometimes, but or Deep Crawl, something like that. But I'd say if you wanted to get a lot of, if you wanted to integrate link building, you wanted to do technical SEO, you want to do audits of your site, and you wanted to do rank tracking, I would, you could use Advanced Web Rankings suite there. On top of that, I think that Moz just doesn't have everything you need. I think Moz.com doesn't have everything you need, but that is by far probably one of the most defaulted to because of pricing. Advanced Web Ranking, I think, is a couple $100 a year. Whereas, I believe our plan, I don't know what my team's paying, but I think it's a couple $100 a month for sure. So, but the problem with that is you don't get the metrics, right? So Moz's metrics is what they tout. And I think they do a fairly good job of providing the metrics, but it's hard when you don't have, if you're doing link building at least, evaluating sites. I like to use Ahrefs, Majestic, and Moz so I can triangulate what they're saying, or triangulate like what is the real story, I guess is maybe how you might put it. So again, it's actually really complex. There's nothing out there that will solve all your needs if you're a really advanced SEO. However, I'd say advanced web ranking is something that will get you there, and if you're looking to do all of it. Now, if you're looking just to do keyword rank tracking, AWR Cloud is fine. It's very cheap, inexpensive rather. And then, if you look to do audit, there's SEO Mater as well as a pretty cheap audit tool. I think it's like $30, $20 a month, something like that. That's actually pretty robust. It's a little more robust than advanced web rankings. Auditing, because it doesn't cover all the advanced web ranking. You can't get all the pages audited. So again, we could probably have a whole webinar about this.
Well, I think that one of the things I would want to reiterate to everybody listening is that not for nothing, but link building is tough. And it's tough because you don't even, even when you build links that are high quality, you don't know if they're actually going to have the same impact that you're hoping they will. Like it's such a combination of so many links and so many things that, if you're going to put the energy in, I mean, just think about it. You're not going to spend $300 for a tool. That's fine. I understand that. I'm wary about spending money on tools as well. But the amount of hours and time, it kind of like relates to, I'm going to buy stocks by going to like CNN's money page and read which one they recommend of the top stocks and then go buy them. I mean, you really need something that analyzes deeper to make decisions that have value for you. And, outside of some of these established tools, it gets really hard, as Kevin was saying, to do enough data to really make the right decision. So in link building, it does take a bit of time and energy. You don't want to build for a year and get nothing from it. That's not as valuable as the $300 you might invest in a tool that will help you get a long way.
I do want to add to this. So within the link building technology world, here's what we're missing. I need to get this point across. SEO automation, like complete automation. Leveraging AI is just such a great opportunity area that nobody's really exploring. So there's a category, I like to call it SEO performance automation. That's automating tasks that are actually going to have a positive impact on your organic ranking. So link building, for example. Theoretically, I think you can automate link building and do it in the highest quality way, so it's not at all spammy through using AI and automate email, chatbot type things. So there's a lot out there. There's a scale from how much work do you want to do yourself to how much fully automation can we do, and you're gonna see that cheaper ones, you do the work yourself. So like BuzzSumo is a pretty cheap tool if we're just talking link building and outreach and prospecting. Up to fully automated solutions, and like at PureLink, like that's the goal. We're building all of our technology, so we pivoted to a technology company, a while ago, and we're just focused on finding the best way to actually naturally automate link building using AI. And it's again, it's how much work you want to do versus how much work you want to automate or semi-automate rather.
Beautiful. I would agree. It's exciting time, and I think we're going to start seeing that hopefully with voices like yours and others out there pushing this forward. I think there's definitely going to be some great progression over the next 5 to 10 years. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have thought it would have been here 4 years ago today. But we're definitely moving slow, a lot slower than I expected us to really embracing AI. And I think it's the technology side. We're more like, tell me how many words, tell me where to get a link, not teach me how to fish, right?
Yeah.
What do you think, Kevin, about directory websites? I mean, just leave it there. Like, I mean, this is a longer question, but like, let's just say, what does directories, both American and non-American, do for us from a link building standpoint today?
I think this is where it comes into contextuality. So I think it's okay if you're listed on a ton of, crappy directories. So that's okay. I don't think it's going to help you from a ranking perspective alone. Things like that. There's definitely high quality directories, like having your company list, it goes beyond directories, but having your company listed on a industry related directory from a trade group, that's high quality. But in general, I think it allows Google to really understand your contextuality and your purpose. So sticking to doing directories to improve how Google understands what your site's actually about and what vertical you're in, I think is actually a good thing, but don't expect them to just pass value and drive ranking alone.
Beautiful. So let's look at the concept of building internationally, right? So every so often, you have, clients that are international, they're savvy enough to like reach out for some really good, contractors or companies or agencies, and in some cases, those search engines, like for instance Scandinavian countries and whatnot, they're going to be focused on getting more regional referring domains. How do you approach that, building like regional links versus just building links in general when it's very specific like that? Do any of these tools that you mentioned accommodate that? Is there a difference in strategy? How do you deal with that scenario?
Yeah, so my team internally, We actually have an index of over 50,000 sites we've built relationships with, and we use that specifically to do link building. We actually built an internal search engine called the mention engine. And a lot of it is based on, so we have like .co.uk, a lot of .co.uk, .fr, .dr, like all those .de. We build relationships with sites across the world, so it makes it a lot easier for us, and that's how we took a PR approach, meaning PRs build relationships in those specific markets. But so how we do it is different than how you might do it, is what I'm getting at. Now, how you might want to do it when it comes to international is actually pretty simple. But I will recommend this, that don't worry about, you can find .coms in specific countries. So when you're looking at sites, you just go through a standard prospecting process. So you can go into Google, but I would select the Google from the geo you're in, or you can do like a IP. You can access Google through an IP from that specific country, right? So if you want to do something like that, that's going to give you a list of sites so you can better evaluate them against. So if they rank really well in Google, you can assume they're good sites. So if you want to take that approach, meaning a normal way I think people do it is you go into Google, you type in a keyword, and then you type in something like in URL guest post. Might be people used to do this. People still do it, but and then you reach out to those sites. So you're going to want to make sure you're looking in either the Google with the unique CCTLD of the country, meaning the npart.com, .co.uk, all that, and actually search with an IP in that country. So if you're going to do that, as far as like tools that allow you to do it, SEMrush is actually I'm actually pretty impressed with SEMrush from a geographic standpoint. So if you want to do link research using SEMrush, they actually have you can actually pick the region. You can do something similar, BuzzStream, which is a tool we have used quite a bit for prospecting and outreach over the years. Doesn't allow you to do it to that degree, but you can at least search for. It depends if you're going language specific. So if you're in France, you want to do French. It's a lot easier to use those tools, right? Because it's just going to give you it. It's going to give you what you need because you're searching in the language of the country. But in general, if you really want to do it and you're outside the country, I'd recommend getting an IP address inside the country, accessing it through an IP address in the country, and then going into the Google or any search engine if you want to do Bing too, or some countries actually use Yahoo a little bit more than Google and Bing a little bit more, but so that's a whole other conversation. But the best case scenario is that the cheapest way to do it, go into Google from that domain, like google.ca for Canada, and then start searching for the keyword.
Great. Yeah, I agree 100%, in that regard. I was always wondering, like, especially as a US marketer, sometimes if you're in like an agency and you have some good names, you can always like look for other SEO companies that are blogging and stuff like that in those countries. And then a lot of times they'll give you a little bit more free reign because they want that US content, that kind of, or other countries that are kind of leading in the digital marketing space. A lot of times they're looking for that type of content. So I always get invited from all kinds of countries to do, SEO rounds. Really do a lot of them, but I could imagine that if I wanted to put any link in any example of anything in there, it would probably get published. So that might be an interesting way. Building an SEO link building, let's not call it SEO, building a link building team. I think a lot of people underestimate the work that goes into it. They're like, hey, you're an SEO, go do link building. And you're like, yeah, it's a little time consuming, especially, the tools alone, and then the emailing and the managing the relationships. And then if you're trying to really have a long-term strategy, can you do it as an individual, a one-person show? And what do you, is it a full-time job? And if it's not one person, what roles would you need to like build a small, effective link building team?
It depends on the tactic you want to take and the strategy. So again, link building, you can do PR. If you're in a bigger company with a lot of clients, a lot of relationships, then you need to, maybe you can leverage those relationships to get links back. Like there's a lot of different ways you can do link building. Now, I think that if you're internal, what only makes sense. You'll never be able to scale up to what my team can do, for example. Like we have, at one point, we had 2 people working on a link building program. We were able to build 600 links in 1 month. I usually throw that into my presentations as like people to guess how many people and how long it took. It took us 2 people, 1 month to build 600 unique referring domain links. And so scaling up to things like that, you're not going to be able to do in-house because you won't have the relationships, and it doesn't make sense to build out the resources. So you just got to know what type of tactics you want to keep internally versus what you want to outsource. So sure, yeah, you can build it. You can definitely build a link building program in-house. It's just what you want to do. I wouldn't necessarily recommend, you're not going to be able to go at scale like we did, building 50,000 relationships with over 50,000 sites and influencers and publishers, and because you're not going to be able to use those sites over and over and over again. So what I would recommend if you're going to be doing it in-house is use research-based link building. You'll see a lot of sites that do it and do it very well. Like Brent, what you said earlier was, leveraging studies and unique studies to generate links. And I believe this, I'm not just touting, I actually believe this so much that we're currently trying to build out a technology that semi-automates surveys and in certain verticals, and then automatically creates, downloadable infographics as a result.
What's
So I'm trying to figure
interesting
out that
about
problem.
what's interesting about that aspect right there is that Google has been, if you watch like a lot of the key players from Apple to Google to a lot of these key players, are starting to really limit the scope of what they're willing to show for results. And the progress of SEO has really limited what we need for results. You just don't need 30 results, 100 results anymore to find what you need. And so creating content that is so intrinsically yours really doesn't allow Google to cut you out. It doesn't allow anybody to cut you out, and they have to link to you. And so I think that's an amazing idea to create something like that. You guys are going to crush it with that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so you can do one of 2 things. One, you can hire on somebody as a content writer to do it, but content writing, unfortunately, how it works right now, content writing is 90% of their SEO and 10% distribution. I saw something in Twitter just yesterday. They gave a cool little graph. It should actually be about 25% content creation, 85% distribution. So you need somebody in-house that's going to be an outreach person. So I recommend PR with a PR background potentially. But there's also characteristics. Are they highly efficient, right? So there are good old school link builders out there, but if you're building it internally right now, I'd recommend, looking for the PR skill set.
New sites. It used to be that we would say, look, don't build links right away, go slow, look for your content to hit some sort of virality before you build some links, so you blend it into the organic links that are coming in. As a new site launching today, what is the current link building strategy?
Yeah, so what I have seen work really well, so we've done a lot with Silicon Valley startups over the years, and that means new products launching, right? So you have a new app, a new website or new product, whatever it might be. So this is based on my experience with that. I believe that yes, the PR needs to be a big part of that. So you need those high authority links. The high authority links are actually really important. If you don't have strong links pointing to it and it's all low authority sites, you're not going to make enough momentum. So I think one of the things you do need to start on right out of the gate are the higher authority links, doing more PR based stuff, especially if it's new. It's not going to be for everybody and every product. If you're a local plumber starting a new site, it's probably not going to be as makes much sense as if you're a well-funded startup in Silicon Valley that created a product which fits into a market and solves a big problem, right? So it's going to be a little bit harder for you, but nonetheless, I do think that taking a PR approach is a good way, no matter what, to start. Then just at this point, and I always recommend this, I even do directories. Get your directories, get listed on everything you can possibly, just to get as much presence as possible. Get a lot of the easy links as well. And then, then on top of that, then you're going to want to do, after you get that into place, I'd say, I would start in on doing more of the content-based link building and distribution. So, and leverage relationships. Do guest posting. I'm recommending you do guest posting. I know I might catch some shit for that, or catch some for that, but I do recommend it when done right, and not for links.
And don't forget that links that don't always pass value can still validate you as an authority,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
there's social sites, there's different places where they might not be valuable from an SEO standpoint, but they're valuable from a you should be there if you're an established business aspect. And I do believe that that all factors into how
Absolutely.
sites are validated, especially as we're trying to move towards the fake news kind of information and getting into, you know, a lot of the schema kind of validation tags that we're going to start looking more in author profiling as we start looking at more, you know, those are going to be extremely important in the future.
Sure. Yeah. Even Google's quality rater guidelines even says it. You got to find find a person. You got to look around for a person online to find more information about them. Like, just get out there as much as possible. When it's new, just worry about getting your name out there.
Well, that's our time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kevin, for taking the time. I mean, again, like these are really a lot deeper answers than I typically see from link builders. So I really appreciate you taking the time to like really dive a bit deeper into this whole process. Clearly, you have a lot of knowledge. Really excited to see some of the new tools you've got working on. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. And yeah.
Thanks, Brent. This was fun, man. I enjoyed it.
We have some questions that we didn't get to. I'm going to send them over to Kevin and see if he has a little bit of time to just jot down some quick responses, and we'll try to see if we can get those out to everybody that registered today, because we did have another 8 to 10 questions that we didn't get answered. So hopefully we'll be able to get that to you guys soon, and join us again. And thank you everyone for joining us today.